What if grief begins the first moment we realize the people we love cannot stay forever? So, for today's story, we're going to be reading from one of the greats, obviously, Mr. Charles Dickens. And this story is called A Child's Dream of a Star. And I think that the little bit of difference that you're going to see is how well Mr. Dickens he intertwines loss in a different way than just despair. So with that being said, let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy. There was once a child, and he strolled about a good deal, and thought of a number of things. He had a sister, who was a child too, and his constant companion. These two used to wonder all day long. They wondered at the beauty of the flowers. They wondered at the height and blueness of the sky. They wondered at the depth of the bright water. They wondered at the goodness and the power of God, who made the lovely world. They used to say to one another, sometimes, supposing all the children upon earth were to die, would the flowers and the water and the sky be sorry? They believed they would be sorry, for, said they, the buds are the children of the flowers, and the little playful streams that gambol down the hillsides are the children of the water, and the smallest bright specks playing at hide and seek in the sky all night must surely be the children of the stars. And they would all be grieved to see their playmates, the children of men, no more. So I hope you're kind of seeing that, like, I like the picture that Mr. Dickens is painting. He paints a very, I guess I resonate with this because this is kind of how I look at life in general. But he paints it a little way more of like artistically than I do. But this is kind of like how I feel about life and death, I guess you want to say. But it's a great start, and I'm loving the way that like he kind of puts the way he places children in the world around us, and also working in childcare for 30 years. I'm sure that you know that children, they play a special place in my heart because of their innocence, because of just who they are. Like I love kids. I love being around them. I love their honesty. Their such direct way of like viewing the world. It's awesome to me. I very much like resonate with it. So thank you, Mr. Dickens, for painting a wonderful picture, even more beautiful picture of children for me. So with that, let's get back. There was one clear shining star that used to come out in the sky before the rest, near the church spire above the graves. It was larger and more beautiful, they thought, than all the others, and every night they watched for it, standing hand in hand at the window. Whoever saw it first cried out, I see the star, and often they cried about both together, knowing so well when it would rise and where. So they grew to be such friends with it that before lying down in their beds, they always looked out once again to bid it a good night. And when they were turning road to sleep, they used to say, God bless the star. But while she was still very young, oh, very, very young, the sister drooped and became too weak. Oh, and became so weak that she could no longer stand in the window at night. And then the child looked sadly out by himself. And when he saw the star, turned round and said to the patient, pale face on the bed, I see the star. And then a smile would come upon her face, and the little weak voice used to say, God bless my brother and the star. And so the time came all too soon, when the child looked out alone, and when there was no face on the bed, and when there was a little grave among the graves, not there before, and when the star made long rays down towards him, as he saw it through his tears. Now, these rays were so bright, and they seemed to make such a shiny way from earth to heaven, that when the child went to his solitary bed, he dreamed about the star, and dreamt that, lying where he was, he saw a train of people taking up that sparkling road of angels. And the star, opening, showed him a great world of light, where many more such angels waited to perceive him. All these angels were waiting, turned their beaming eyes upon the people who were carried up into the star. And some came out from the long rows in which they stood, and fell upon the people's necks, and kissed them tenderly, and went away with them down avenues of light, and were so happy in their company that, lying in his bed, he wept for joy. But there were many angels who did not go with them. Among them one he knew, the patient face that once had lain upon the bed was glorified and radiant, but his heart found out his sister among all the host. His sister's angel lingered near the entrance of the star, and said to the leader among whose here brought the people thinker, who brought the people thither, "Is my brother come?" He said no. She was turning hopefully away, when the child stretched out his arms and cried, "O sister, I am here, take me." And then she turned her beaming eyes upon him, and it was night, and the star was shining into the room, making long rays down towards him, as he saw it through his tears. From that hour forth, the child looked out upon the star as on the home he was to go to, when his time should come, and he thought that he did not belong to the earth alone, but to the star too, because of his sister's angel gone before. There was a baby born to be a brother to the child, and while he was so little that he never yet had spoken word, he stretched his tiny form out on his bed and died. Again the child dreamed of the open star, and the company of angels, and the train of people, and the rows of angels with their beaming eyes all turned upon those people's faces. Said sister's angel to the leader, "Is my brother come?" And he said, "Not that one, but another." As the child beheld his brother's angel in his arms, he cried, "O sister, I am here, take me." And she turned and smiled upon him, and the star was shining. He grew to be a young man, and was busy at his books, when an old servant came to him and said, "Thy mother is no more. I bring her blessings on her darling son." Again at night he saw the star, and all that former company. Said his sister's angels to the leader, "Is my brother come?" And he said, "Thy mother." A mighty cry of joy went forth through all the star, because the mother was reunited to her two children. And he stretched out his arms and cried, "O mother, sister, brother, I am here, take me." And they answered him, "Not yet." And the star was shining. He grew to be a man whose hair was turning gray, and he was sitting in his chair by the fireside, heavy with grief, and with his face bedewed with tears, when the star opened once again. Said his sister angel to the leader, "Is my brother come?" And he said, "Nay, but his maiden daughter." And the man who had been the child saw his daughter newly lost to him, a celestial creature among those three, and he said, My daughter's head is on my sister's bosom, and her arm is round my mother's neck, and her feet, there is the baby of old time, and I can bear the parting from her. God be praised. And the star was shining. Thus the child came to be an old man, and his once smooth face was wrinkled, and his steps were slow and feeble, and his back was bent. And one night, as he lay upon his bed, his children standing round, he cried. As he cried, so long ago, I see the star. They whispered they whispered one another, he is dying. And he said, I am. My age is falling from me like a garment, and I move towards the star as a child. And oh, my Father, now I thank thee that it has so often opened to receive those dear ones who await me. And the star was shining, and it shines upon his grave. So, honestly, I don't know. I'll put it very simply, and I'll probably tell you a second story real quick. So, like, when I was actually like 12, like 11, 10, 11, or 12, I remember I remember like waking up in like the middle of the night, kind of like in a panic attack. Like not in a panic attack, but I kind of woke up in the middle of the night and I was just sitting there thinking, and it kind of hit me that like I thought of my grandfather. Now my grandfather and I we were never like close or anything like that, but he was always cool, like good dude. And I just remember thinking about him passing away, and I don't know why it just really it rattled me because it was the first time I ever really thought of death, and I think as I was sitting there thinking, I was like, okay, I but I grew up in a church and all that, so I said, look, I was like, God, I know that I won't be here forever. I know I don't make the best choices. Even at like 11 and 12, I knew I did some kind of stupid stuff, but I was just like, hey, I was like, if you, because I was thinking about my grandfather, and I was like, I knew he lived a good life. He was never rude to anybody, disrespectful. So for me, it was like, okay, I kind of knew, like, I got into trouble. I like to kind of do stupid stuff and whatever. And I was like, look, if you can give me a good life, I will live by your words. You know what I mean? Meaning by being a good person, treating people respectfully, things of that nature. And so, like, that's kind of like my like encounter with death and like the quote unquote star, like that like night was kind of like the way that this guy kind of looks at, you know, death. I will say this though, when my grandfather did die, um it was interesting because I know a lot of times people try to go up and they try to tell a funny story, but like I actually did have a really funny story, and I'll tell it to you. So like when I broke my leg in university, I was like 19 or like 20. And but what happened is I went and I had to go get a metal rod put in my leg. When I went to go get the metal rod put in, like I had to stay there for a little bit, and then um eventually it got infected and I had to go back. But during the first stint when I stayed there and I finally got the rod put in and all that kind of stuff, my my mom called me, and or no, my mom came by or something, and she goes, "Hey, look, your grandfather's gonna come in. He's gonna say about like two or three things, and he's gonna leave." And I was just kind of looking at him like, "Okay, what's the big deal?" She's like, "I just didn't want you to be freaked out because he doesn't say much, and I know you guys aren't close, but I know he wants like that's just the way he is. He says like his thing, wishes you well, and then he's out." So I was like, "Okay, it's no big deal, whatever." So I'm laying in the bed one day, and the next thing you know, my grandfather comes walking in the door. Comes and walks up to you. He's like, "Hey," he's like, "How you doing, Omar?" And I'm like, "I'm doing good, Pap Pap." I'm like, "How you doing?" He's like, "I'm all right." He's like, So they treating you well? I'm like, yeah, the food's okay. And I mean, I get to watch TV and whatnot, but I mean, the pain's kind of hard, but I'm okay. I'll be all right, you know? He's like, all right. He's like, that's good to know. He's like, all right. He's like, well, hey, you take care of yourself and I'll see you when you get out. I was like, all right, Pat, Pat, see ya. And I kind of chuckled because I knew it was coming, but I didn't know it was going to be like that quick. And he just left. So, like, the crazy part is that the hospital that I stayed in, when the hospital that I stayed in, he actually used to work at it for like many years. He did like he was a delivery driver or whatever, but he worked at that same hospital for years. So being in there, it was kind of like, oh, okay, we had that. The funny thing about it is that like literally, I think I want to say a year or 2 years later, like 2 or 3 years later, it was several years later. After I got out of the hospital, got all better, went back and everything, my grandfather, he actually, um, he got sick and he went into the same hospital. Like, not the same floor, but it was like the same area that I was in and the same hospital when he got sick. So I, not realizing it, I'm kind of the same way. I ain't got to be all buddy buddy, but I wanted to go see him. So I drove my car over there. Like, remember, I was like, by this time I was like 20, like early 20s. I'm still a kid. But I drive in there and he just so happened to be up watching TV, just like me. I walk in. How's it going, Pat Pat? You doing okay? They taking good care of you with some food? Ah, okay, cool. I'm like, all right, I just wanted to stop by and see you. So you take care, okay? He's like, all right, see ya. And I just rolled out. And that was like the last interaction that I had with him. You know what I mean? Before he passed away. The crazy thing about him passing away is that I remember I think it was cancer. He had like a big lump in his leg and it ended up being cancer. And I remember he was like, they were trying to figure out what to do. And it was weird because it was like it just so happened I went to go see him with my mom or something like that. I had to go see him, but I didn't know that this was like, okay, the decision, okay, life or death. And it was like my mom, my two aunts, my grandmother. I don't think my dad was there. And then I was there, but somehow I was there, right? And I was like, a little kid. I was just there, and I've never seen my mom or my aunts cry before. And it was like my grandmother, like always, she was just like a rock. You know what I mean? Just like, that's just what she did. But as they're sitting there, they're like, well, we got to figure out whether we want to pull the plug or do we want to try to like see what happens. And so they asked everybody in the room, you know what I mean? And they were like, well, Omar, what do you think? And I was like, I'm just a kid. I was like, I don't have any say. And I can't remember. I can't remember who said it, whether it was my Aunt Jill or if it was I think it was my grandmother who said, hey, she's like, yeah, but you're the first grandchild. And I'm like, you have a say. I think at that time I was the only man in the room, the male. My dad, I don't know where he was. He might have I think my dad was like in jail or something like that. I don't know. But I was the oldest male. And they were like, yeah, but you're the oldest male and you do have a word. And my grandmother was like, and you can speak up. This is part of like life. And it was crazy because I was like, I wasn't upset. I wasn't emotional. I was just like, look, I'm like, Pap, you know, he's lived his life. I was like, as I'm laying here, I'm like, is this what he would want? You know what I mean? I know when I looked at him, my entire life, even into his late life, he was a mover. He was a shaker. He did things when he wanted to do them. I don't think he'd want to be laid up in his bed just for us. And I'm like, I think, like anyone, he would never want us to suffer. So why make him suffer? And I'm like, I just say, let him be. Like, I don't want him to go, but I don't want to see somebody I care about suffer. Like, it's just, I think it's the right thing to do. and they accepted it. Like my it was weird being that young, and they were like, okay, we hear you and we understand what you're talking about. You're making sense. And so that was kind of like my take on, but it's so, but if you look at it, right, if you look at like the story itself, it's not necessarily, to me, it's not about death and despair. It's about how you carry life and death with you. Like everybody knows you're going to pass away. And if you notice like the steps that the little boy, he had like kind of like the dreams in the beginning. And then you saw as he got older, now he's watching like his younger brother pass away. And then he watches his mom pass away. And then you see his daughter passes. But then notice how like when it's his turn to pass, he's like, yes. He's like, it's my turn. It's my time. And to me, like this story, it's more about like how it's not necessarily about death and despair itself. It's how do you walk through life, understanding that the end is here. You know what I mean? And the thing I like about this story is that you don't see him try to dress it up with what I would say today, what a lot of people try to mask a lot of the despair or a lot of the heaviness with novelty. And so I like these stories. Like they might be dark and people might say, "Oh, it's kind of grim." But I'm like, "Yes, but can you see the beauty?" Like think about it, how much like the love that you hear in the angels and like the sisters. "Oh, is that my brother?" Think about how like when he talks of his about his daughter having her arm around her head in her sister's bosom, arm around his mother's neck, feet are at, you know, standing there with their brother. Like the admiration that hey, it's okay. She's being taken care of. And that I think we as a society we get away from that. You know what I mean? Of like there is a beautiful side to death. There are good things that come from bad things, and you need that in life. You need the good and the bad. So I just think it's like we as a society have been so trained to, no, 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 get away, get away, get away, wait, bad, 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 bad. And it's like you can never get away from it. You can't. The way to deal with it is you have to accept it. Not embrace it like, oh yeah, I want death everywhere. No. But I'm saying allow it to come and to go. To come and to go. So I definitely as you can tell, a lot of these stories they are heavy. But again, I'm kind of a deep person, and I like them. I like the beauty in this when he's like, and I like the ending of like, hey, and the star was shining, and it shines upon his grave, meaning that like now he goes home, but he's lived his life. It's been full. He's had the good, the bad, the mundane, and even though they don't tell you, but that's the point, is that it's to get you like all this bad stuff. But look at him; he kept moving forward. That is the point of it. So, so hopefully you enjoyed the story. Hopefully you enjoyed my story as well. And actually, I will say, let me end with this, just to let you know, when my grandfather passed away, I did tell that story, and yeah, it made me smile because it was kind of like it was. I don't know if he noticed, but the way that he came in and like talked to me, and I don't know if he noticed or remembered. I never asked, but to me it was just funny. It was kind of like, "Ha, hey, I got you too." You know what I mean? But it was just, I think it was just a cool interaction, and the fact that like when I first started to look upon death, like that his image was the one, even though we weren't close, but to now I have that memory. I'm very grateful for everything he's done for showing me just, I mean, literally, I do a lot of what he does, like how I don't really say much, but I go and help people when I can. Don't even think about it. I don't ask for nothing. So it's one of those things. But yeah, but I definitely hope that, um, this story just kind of, I hope it just did bring a little bit of, made the topic a little bit lighter. You know what I mean? And just shows that, grief changes shape throughout life, but Love keeps echoing throughout memory, and it keeps echoing long after we're gone. You know what I mean? And that, even though some losses, they never leave us, they simply become a part of who we are. And that's what I'm saying about the embrace. Like, carry them. It's okay to carry that loss, because that loss, it's carrying their memory further. But with that being said, this next story we're gonna be stepping in, it's definitely be a lot darker and a lot more philosophical. And trust me, like, when you hear the title, you're gonna be like, oh wow. But it's gonna be answering the great question of what would happen if death stopped being silent and finally it spoke back to you. So if you guys are enjoying that, hopefully you enjoyed the story. Hopefully you enjoyed my stories. Hopefully you enjoyed just everything about today's episode. And you know, hope you come on back so that we can answer the next question. But until then, be well and take care.